Pay close attention. What you're about to see is Bible prophecy being fulfilled.
Welcome to another edition of YPN News, bringing you the news that relates to Bible prophecy and foretold by Yeshua Hawkins Katan. We got a wide variety of stories tonight to discuss, including Russia now expanding their nuclear program with 5 nuclear bases that they've been working on. So we'll have those details. We're also going to talk about the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. The people are really starting to suffer. They have been already, but now the starvation is really setting in, with the aid not being able to be allowed in to help them. So those stories and many more. But first, we're going to talk about something we haven't discussed very often, and that is COVID-19. Now, we don't hear a lot about COVID-19 these days, but the CDC is reporting that cases of the pandemic illness have risen by 50% across the United States. Now, what's most disturbing about the data is that emergency room visits for young children suffering from COVID-related issues is the highest it's been since March of this year.
Well, Dr. John LaPook, a CBS News medical correspondent, says, quote, "We see this with a lot of illnesses. There's a winter spike, there's a summer spike, but people should not be blasé about it. COVID, if it strikes you, especially for the vulnerable, and we're talking about very young, that is children under the age of 4, and of course the elderly. Now, people who are immunocompromised, they're also at risk as well. There are millions of people who are immunocompromised. They can really get sick," he said.
Well, so the question is, should you get vaccinated? Well, it depends on who you get advice from. According to Dr. LaPook, the CDC's recommendation is slightly different from the major societies out there, like the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, who say pregnant women should get vaccinated. Their reasoning is to protect the child even after birth until they are old enough to get immunized themselves, which I think is around 6 months of age.
Well, there are still new variants of COVID which continue to surface, but none have been found to be more deadly than any others. And it really depends upon the health of the person who has contracted it. And that's been kind of the talk among several healthcare professionals at the peak of COVID, is that it really more is an accentuator of illnesses that a person already has.
Well, for the second year in a row, the number of children being born in the United States has decreased. What does this mean in terms of our future generations? Well, to get an understanding of what's going on, take a look at this next video, courtesy of CBS Evening News. Take a look.
New data released by the CDC shows the number of children women are having has decreased for a second year in a row. The record level decline last year is leading to fears there may not be enough children to sustain the next generation. For more, we are joined by CBS Chief Medical Correspondent Dr. John LaPook, who's been analyzing the numbers. So, Dr. LaPook, why is this an issue we should be worried about?
Well, you know, I've been looking at the big numbers and the big pattern, right? If you go back to 2000, there were 4 million births and about 2.4 million deaths. And that led to 1.6 million more people on Earth than before that, right? You go forward to 2023, the number of births has dropped from 4 million to 3.6 million. I mean, that's a huge drop. And the deaths were 3.1 million. And so now you only have an excess of 500,000 new people, okay? Over time, you know, we talk about the sandwich generation, right? You know, the people in the middle, and then there are the people that they're taken care of, you know, their parents, and then the kids are underneath them. You know, that's gotta be balanced. And it's getting lopsided. And the fear is that as these numbers go down, you're simply not gonna have enough people entering the economy to sustain it.
And John, do we know why this is happening, or is there some thoughts about why these numbers are declining?
Yeah, there are a lot of thoughts. So first of all, the most obvious is that women are delaying pregnancy. We know that's been a pattern for decades and decades. So they're having babies later. Teenagers, interestingly enough, the birth rate there has dropped. So that's from contraception and education. And then you have sort of the question mark. So a lot of people are talking about the generation now saying, you know what, I just don't want to have children. There's such uncertainty about the future. I've actually had that in my own practice, people talking to me about this, whereas I didn't have that 10 years ago.
And so John, just to get, is it that the U.S. population it's not decreasing, it's just growing at a slower rate? Is that right?
It's such a good question, John, because, and this is the punchline here at the end of all these numbers, which can be confusing. From 2023 to 2024, the population of the United States increased by 3.3 million. But I just told you that there were only about 500,000 new births. What was the other 85% was from international migration. This is at a time when we're cutting down on that, right? We're sending people out of the country.
Interesting, Katan, that the year from 2023 to 2024, 3.3 million, the population increased in the United States, but only 500,000 were actual births. The rest was the immigration.
Right. So we're seeing our numbers increase, but not through natural citizens. And so, but that still is really distressing. It just shows the numbers are going down overall. Well, syphilis is on the rise in Chatham County, Georgia. Across the state, it continues to be reported at a steady rate. There is also an increase in cases of children being born with the disease, which can cause blindness and nervous system issues, among other problems. Because of the alarming increase, mothers are required to be tested for syphilis at their first prenatal appointment and during their third trimester.
Well, District Health Director for the Coastal Health District, Dr. Bonzo Reddick, explains why the reasons for the two tests. He said, so a lot of times people will have syphilis and they may be concerned about their symptoms, but the symptoms go away and they say, oh, I'm fine now. But they don't realize that syphilis continues to replicate in their body. They become pregnant and it can affect their children. And that's what we're seeing in Georgia, unquote. So Dr. Reddick says that the rate of neonatal syphilis is going up, and hence that's the reason for the two tests in the beginning and the third, in the first semester and then the trimester.
Right, and the testing is obviously necessary because they're seeing this and they want to protect the mother and the child, but really it seems like they're going to have to get to the root cause of what is bringing the syphilis into the bodies. Well, syphilis can not only cause sores all over the body, but tumors, damage to the brain and other organs, and can even cause death. Oftentimes people are what they call asymptomatic, meaning they won't display any symptoms and won't know they have the disease without testing.
Well, Dr. Reddick also says a lot of times syphilis is kind of like lupus. People call those two diseases the great imitators because they often look like so many other things. People will have this and they say, oh, I might just have chickenpox or measles or something like that, or I just have scarlet fever or maybe strep throat, but it actually might be syphilis. And that's kind of scary, that there are that many people that are asymptomatic. They don't even realize they're carrying syphilis and they just think it's something else. Yeah,
and with the decrease of moralities in society the way it is, you can see how things like this can rapidly spread.
Easily spread.
Vibrio vulnificus. Well, that's something you don't hear every day. This is a name you should be familiar with if you plan to swim in warm coastal waters, but also if you like seafood from those same waters. Well, the flesh-eating disease is now on the rise. Please listen closely to this next video for more details.
A warning tonight from Florida health officials after a flesh-eating bacteria has killed 4 people in the state, including one in St. Johns County. The bacteria, Vibrio vulnificus, lives in warm, salty water. It can enter your body through open cuts or by eating raw shellfish. Our Christina Burgess joins us live outside Baptist Medical Center downtown. And Christina, I know you've been speaking with an infectious disease doctor about the warning signs and what we can do to stay safe.
Yeah, Heather, so far there has been 11 cases reported right here in the state of Florida. I had the chance to speak with Baptist Health's medical director over infectious diseases about who is most at risk and why they're urging caution, especially during hurricane season.
It thrives in warm, salty, brackish water. Vibrio vulnificus, a flesh-eating bacteria that can turn a beach day into a medical emergency. Baptist Health's medical director for infectious disease, Dr. Shalika Katugaha, talks about the ways you can contract the infection that's rare, but when it strikes, can be serious.
People generally can get this by swallowing Vibrio or by getting it exposed to an open wound.
If you ingested Vibrio from eating a raw shellfish, your symptoms can be nausea, vomiting, or diarrhea. If you have wound exposure, you can notice redness, swelling, or blistering at the site. According to the CDC, Vibrio vulnificus infects about 80,000 people each year in the U.S. and kills around 100. In 2024, Florida had 82 cases and 19 deaths reported, many in October following flooding from Hurricane Milton and Helene. This year, 11 cases have been reported with 4 deaths, one in St. Johns County. If detected early, doctors can treat it with antibiotics, but if you are a part of an at-risk population or immunocompromised, you're at risk of a more serious form, which is why doctors say prevention is key.
If you have an open wound, you should stay out of salt water or brackish water, and that includes wading on the beach. Then again, if you're at increased risk and you have to be in water, wear protective clothes and shoes.
Katan, they actually say wear protective clothing, but I'm not sure how you can protect yourself when all the clothing gets wet and the still water can get in there, any cut or open sore or anything like that. So it seems kind of strange that they're even saying you can go in their water, but just have the right clothing on.
Yeah, I mean, and if you have even the slightest scratch, you become susceptible to that. Not everybody checks their body before they go into the water because they're there just to have a fun time.
Beaches are no longer fun like they used to be. Well, moving on to the Middle East, Israel's fight against Hamas in Gaza is having a devastating toll on Palestinians there. Now, many, especially children, are suffering and dying from starvation. Now, some say Israel is to blame for the interference of aid getting to the people. Israel says it's up to the aid groups. Well, who's to blame? This next video sheds some light on the topic. Please take a look, and we have to warn you, some of the images are a little bit graphic.
In the Middle East, ceasefire talks are off for now. The war goes on. The death toll climbs, and the humanitarian crisis in Gaza worsens, with Palestinians starving to death or risking their lives to get food. We caution you, there are images of starving children in this report from Elizabeth Palmer.
Mohammed Mahdi lives with his family, but there's nothing to eat. So he sets off to find food, joining thousands of Gazans so hungry they're heading into an area the Israeli military has told them not to go. But this is what they're after, a chance to loot scarce aid from the few passing trucks, precious bags of flour. As Mahdi waits, an armed drone starts shooting. They're shooting at us now, says Mahdi, unshaken. It happens every day. The images of hunger in Gaza are haunting. Children are the most vulnerable, but almost no one has enough to eat. Israel pushes back against accusations that it's blocking food aid. It released these pictures of supplies waiting inside Gaza for pickup by international agencies. The agencies say Israel makes it impossible for them to collect or distribute the aid safely. But James Smith, a doctor who's worked in Gaza and a humanitarian policy expert, says that's beside the point. Israel, not the agencies, is responsible for getting food to the hungry.
They have an obligation to ensure that humanitarian assistance, life-saving assistance, gets to the people that need it.
Basically, by moving the aid in and then saying it's not our job anymore, it's up to the UN to deliver this stuff, Israel is in breach of international law.
Absolutely.
Mahdi, out of gunfire range, is now interrupted by an explosion. That landed where people are waiting for the trucks, he said. Thank goodness I wasn't up there.
We saw in Liz's piece those long lines of emergency aid. Israel says it's up to the aid groups. The aid groups say Israel has to make it at least safe. While that stalemate is going on, are there any other international efforts underway to get aid into Gaza?
Yes, John, there is loud outcry about this mass starvation. Countries have been calling on Israel to allow aid in, and two Jordanian officials told CBS they're considering airdrops, and the UAE has a 7,000-ton aid ship on its way to Gaza's shores now. But who distributes the food once it arrives is the hard part here, because last time people died during airdrops when parcels fell on them. Now Gazans are crowded into an even smaller zone with less open space for those pallets to land. Food isn't even enough to help those who are acutely malnourished. They require medical support. Now, Israel, as you said, denies responsibility. They blame the UN for failure to distribute. They blame Hamas for the looting of aid. The UN says this is all just desperation and that Israel restricts its ability to get help to the people who need it most.
Margaret, what about the United States of America? Is its government going to do anything?
There's no appetite for military involvement. And as President Trump said today, Hamas has tapped everyone along at the negotiating table. In the meantime, the Trump administration wants that recently formed Israeli-backed group called the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation to distribute aid instead of the UN. And they've pledged $30 million to help the foundation do so. But it uses armed contractors standing behind Israeli soldiers while they hand out food inside military zones. The UN argues those tactics are neither adequate nor safe, and it doesn't work for Gazans who are too weak to travel to the zone.
Boy, it's disturbing to see that, but a big concern is in the day of mass media, instant media that we have now. You'd think you'd have a little bit more input from the international community outside of just talking so that these people, because, the victims are the ones who are civilians, so these people can actually get the aid that they need. It seems like there would be more of a push to get them the food that they need immediately.
Right, and also the aid. They say, well, Israel is saying that it's the aid groups, but the Palestinians are saying, no, Israel is blocking it. That should be a simple problem to fix. Why could they not get it in there? Why can't there be some dialogue and figure out how this aid can get to these people?
And the shooting. What's the shooting in the areas where the people are going to get the food?
Right.
Yeah, crazy. Well, the U.S. and Russia are having tensions, which of course are continuing to rise, with even one of Russia's officials threatening World War III. Well, the Trump administration is being pushed by Congress to consider more sanctions against Russia, as well as lifting range restrictions on weapons sent to Ukraine from the United States. Lifting those range restrictions would allow Ukraine to go deeper into Russia after bigger and more strategic targets. President Trump boasts that he's the reason greater troubles haven't come upon Russia, posting on Truth Social, saying, quote, "If it wasn't for me, lots of really bad things would have already happened to Russia," end quote.
Well, a minister of parliament, Luke Pollard, said in front of a crowd at Glasgow regarding securing Britain's future, not mere finances, but its military security as well. Now, like many leaders, the way to peace is not through negotiations, but through strength, military strength. Now, take a look at this next video to see what he means.
First, we are moving to warfighting readiness as the central purpose of our armed forces. When we are being directly threatened by states with advanced military forces, the most effective way to deter them is to be ready. And frankly, to show them that we're ready, to deliver peace through strength. The threat we now face is more serious, more immediate, and more unpredictable than at any time since the Cold War. We face war in Europe, new nuclear risks, daily cyber attacks, growing Russian aggression in our waters, menacing our skies, their reckless actions driving up the cost of living here at home, creating economic pain and hitting working people the hardest. First, we are moving to warfighting readiness as the central purpose of our armed forces. When we are being directly threatened by states with advanced military forces, the most effective way to deter them is to be ready. And frankly, to show them that we're ready, to deliver peace through strength.
Well, peace through strength has been the military way for a long period of time, but it only creates more enemies, never friends.
Right, and not just for the U.S.
Right.
A lot of the countries share that same sentiment.
That's correct.
Well, Russia is setting lines for the U.S. and EU not to cross, with bolder and clear warnings as the EU is targeting something that's lusted after by many nations, oil. Take a look at our next video.
Well, talk of a nuclear response no longer lives in the world of hypotheticals. Russia has drawn its lines. Lines the West now edges closer to crossing. Well, as Europe scrambles to arm Ukraine and fractures ripple through the EU, Moscow warns that those who meddle might find themselves not just at the firing line, but in the Armageddon's crosshair.
Tensions are rising fast. Russia is sharpening its stance. The warnings are becoming dangerous. European Union is targeting Russian oil. European Union is targeting Russian oil. European Union is targeting Russian oil. Ratcheting up the nuclear stakes, Moscow has issued its starkest warning yet, asserting that any aggression against Russia by a non-nuclear state, backed or joined by a nuclear power, will now be considered a joint attack, inviting the full wrath of Russia's nuclear doctrine. The Kremlin message is unflinching. Coalitions supporting Ukraine would be a target.
The very first missiles shot down by our air defense systems will allow us to quickly establish where and how they were produced, and most importantly, to accurately name the country of origin. We have already warned about the consequences.
U.S. President Donald Trump on Monday announced a deal where European NATO states to buy U.S. weaponry, particularly advanced Patriot systems, and give it to Kyiv. Along with Patriots, there's also discussions of arming Ukraine with long-range weapons to help it strike deeper inside Russia. Now the EU adopted a sweeping new package of sanctions on Russia over the Ukraine war, looking to pile more pressure on the Kremlin by lowering a price cap for Moscow's oil exports. Moscow downplayed the impact of fresh European Union sanctions on Russia's economy, saying they were illegal and would backfire.
Well, of course, the EU, the United States, the UN, NATO, these are always been at Russia's door, and Russia has been very frustrated as they've seen them encompassing around their nation, considering it a threat, and Russia's been really temperate in not striking back, but they have given the warnings that any country that supports Ukraine obviously they're going to consider them as a joint partner in attacking Russia.
Right, and as you said, they've actually been very temperate because those bases that they keep setting up are strategically placed right around Russia, and they obviously realize it, and they're saying, look, you're crossing the lines when you do this.
Yeah, well, as they continue to fight, they're getting ready to head into the fourth year, come in 2026, of this conflict between Russia and Ukraine, and wintertime is a tough time, so if something isn't done, it's just going to continue to get worse. Well, Russia is bolstering its nuclear resources as it has been discovered that the superpower is quietly building nuclear bases, 5 in fact, across the country. Russia, it seems, is preparing itself for a long conflict in the West, with the West, Those bases are in Kaliningrad, Osipov-Ichi, Kamkata, Gadzidio, and Novaya Zemlya. Russia has the world's largest nuclear arsenal stockpile with over 4,300 active nuclear warheads.
Well, the Kremlin criticized the country supplying weapons to Ukraine as a profit-driven enterprise and reiterated Russia's nuclear doctrine, stating, quote, any attack by a non-nuclear state backed by a nuclear state will be treated as a joint assault, end quote. Now, this comes after the U.S. has just approved more arms to be sent to Ukraine. Experts warn that Russia's nuclear saber-rattling might be more than just talk as things continue to escalate.
That's right. And of course, we know that the nations, as we looked at just this one segment of YPN, but as we've been looking at it for many, many years, they're definitely angry. The people are suffering as a result. They're waiting on the leaders to implement changes that will create a better way of living. And in the meantime, the people are suffering as a result of these conflicts, and we're not any closer to peace.
Right. 4 years going into the Russia-Ukraine war, and that's just one of many situations. And as you said, they're no closer. And like we just commented, that Russia, they're stating now, and these experts are saying that, look, at a certain point, it's not just going to be mere words. They're going to respond, and that's even going to be a lot more devastating when this goes nuclear.
World War III, with the utilization of not conventional, but nuclear weapons. Well, if you'd like to learn more about this time period and where the world is heading, contact the House of Yahweh. And when you contact the House of Yahweh, don't forget to request your free copies of the Prophetic Word magazine and the monthly newsletter. Here's how.
To contact the House of Yahweh, you can write them at P.O. Box 2498, Abilene, Texas, 79604. You can call them at 1-800-613-9494. Visit them by going to any of their websites. You can go to yahweh.com, yisraelhawkins.com, or yahwehsbranch.com. If you'd like to visit our website, you can do so by going to YPNnews.com. For any emails, you can email info@yahweh.com. For any international calls, you can call the number that's on your screen. And once again, don't forget to check out the Yisrael Says and Ask Yisrael program by going to YisraelSays.com and AskYisrael.com.
Well, don't go anywhere. Up next is another classic sermon by Yisrael Hawkins. From all of us here at YPN News, I'm Katan Alexander.
And I'm Jeffrey Heimerman.
Thank you for watching.